Hello and welcome to Retrospective Rants with me, Joey Huff, as your host. But before I tell you what I'm ranting about, I'd like to tell you a story. The year is 2017. The culture war is only in its initial phases, and that one virus is not even a glimmer in the... So people are still excited for movies, and the movies that they are most excited for are the Star Wars movies. And now, an exciting, fresh, and uncontroversial film is about to hit theaters, and its name is The Last Jedi. Now, there are many reasons for a young nerd to be excited for this movie. But one of the reasons for a young Asian nerd to be excited is that TLJ will feature an Asian actor as part of the main cast. Pay no attention to that other movie that came out the year before. It's just a side story, and definitely not going to be the only good product that Disney Cinema will be bringing. Now, my mother's half of my family is Filipino. And we are a proud East Asian, South Pacific Islander, quasi-Latino, whatever the hell the universities say. And our minds are racing with the possibilities of this new character. Will she be a Jedi? A gunslinger? Something totally new and exciting? The first Asian main character in this super progressive and ultra-modern mainline Star Wars movie is a tech assistant. And her name is Rose. Not really breaking new ground, but whatever. Is she a tech prodigy? Maybe we'll bring some cyberpunk into Star Wars and see an aspect of the universe we haven't yet. Nope. Rose and the other wasted main character need to find Benicio del Toro, so that he can do all the crazy tech stuff. Okay. Does she have some good action scenes? Nope. No, she kills some minions, but it's in the background of other people's action scenes. Alright, does she at least have a good character arc? So she starts off being really sad about her sister dying in a really, really stupid battle. Then she fangirls over the other wasted character. Then she gets angry and arrests him. Then Duke Atreides tells her that she and the wasted character need to find Benicio del Toro. There are some chase sequences, and then she becomes okay with the wasted character, and Benicio del Toro does what he does best and ends his pointless cameo by betraying the heroes. Rose and the wasted character barely escape to the last resistance stronghold, which, as far as they know, houses the last living resistance fighters. And these people have, allegedly, been the entire motivation for Rose's character. So when the not Imperials attack the rebel base with another giant laser, and the wasted character is going to sacrifice himself to destroy the laser and save the resistance, Rose crashes into him and stops the heroic sacrifice. When the wasted character asks her why she stopped him from saving the people she loves, Rose says, "We don't win by destroying what we hate, we win by saving the people we love." And then she makes out with him. And as she forces this unneeded and out-of-nowhere tonguing, the main entrance to the resistance base explodes. She makes out with the guy that she has had no chemistry with throughout the entire movie, while the building that holds the only family she has left explodes in the background. Then she falls unconscious. That was the story arc of Rose. I didn't like it, and neither did a large portion of my family. Something interesting happened, though. Criticism of Rose was quite frowned upon in the public sphere, at least online. Any who dared point out the obvious stupidity of her character were decried as racist misogynists. If you are Asian and dared criticize this sacred rose, you are sexist and internally racist. Because of society and whatever. If you haven't figured it out yet, I am not going to rant about TLJ. No, I shall be ranting about representation in visual media. Yes, among all the hot-button issues of the culture wars, representation stands atop them all like a shabby tin colossus. Because for the past 15 or so years, mass media, educational elites, and the keyboard gladiators have been shouting about how we need representation and diversity right now. Because we didn't have these things in the past. Except for those times where we did. And when we did have representation in media, it wasn't the right representation. And even if it was the right representation, it was hated on by everybody, just like it's hated on right now. But I have a counterpoint, a few, actually. Sir Ian McKellen played the role of Gandalf in the legendary Lord of the Rings movie trilogy, which is, of course, based on the legendary Lord of the Rings book series written by J.R.R. Tolkien, a famed Catholic scholar, linguist, and author. Ian McKellen is also gay. And do you know how many people cared? None. Sir McKellen gave a fantastic performance, had some fun interactions with the cast and with the fans, and history was made. That was it. And The Fellowship of the Ring, first movie in the trilogy, released in 2001, though filming began in 1999. In 1994, the Spider-Man animated series was released. Though it lived in the shadow of its older sibling, X-Men, and of course the unassailable Batman the Animated Series, Spider-Man 90s was well loved by kids of the time and is still looked upon fondly by nerds today. One of the most beloved aspects of this series was the character of Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, a massive, muscled criminal mastermind who served as the primary and overarching antagonist for most of the series. Much of the greatness of this character came from the performance of his voice actor, Roscoe Lee Browne. Now, Roscoe Lee Browne was one of the old guard of actors and featured in my favorite John Wayne movie, The Cowboys. He was also one of the most famed African American actors of his era, because he was a true master of the craft and pursued roles that defied the conventions of those early days. Conventions which had almost entirely disappeared by the time of his performance in Spider-Man. No one cared that he was a black man voicing a white man, though, because his performance was magnificent, and that's all anyone cared about. And that's not the only race swap that Marvel has done. Most people don't even know that Nick Fury was originally a white dude, but ever since the Ultimate Comics run from Marvel, which was 2000 to 2015, Nick Fury was a black dude. Then Samuel Jackson took the role, and that was that. Nick Fury was a black dude, and people thought, neat. At least until recent times. You know what? Let's go for something weirder, though. What about gender-swapped casting? And let's go to something that is apparently famous for its supposedly misogyny-coded writing. Let's talk about anime and manga. Technically, it's a light novel, but it branches into the rest. In 2004, the light novel Fate Stay Night was released. There's a lot of lore around this story, but the main summary is this. Magic and magecraft are very real forces in the world, as are those who practice them. There's also vampires from the moon, physical manifestations of ye old metaphysical concepts, but that's not important at the moment. Every so often, 7 of these mages will converge on Fuyuki City in Japan, and they will battle for the Holy Grail, and the Holy Grail will grant them a single, boundless wish. The means to wage this war comes in the form of heroic spirits. These are the summoned and bound souls of heroes from humanity's myth and legend, made to do battle until only one mage and spirit team remains, a master and a servant, technically speaking. One of these spirits, the main heroic spirit, is called Saber, named so because she is of the Saber class of servant. She is a fierce, capable, and superhuman fighter with a tragic history and a strong, though tested, moral compass. She is also King Arthur. Yes, in the world of fate, King Arthur was actually a young woman named Artoria, and she had to hide her name and sex, though she still wears anime warrior queen armor because reasons, to take the throne. That's a pretty big gender swap, right? But nobody cared about that. Because beyond being a badass fighter, Saber is also a fantastic character with a fantastic story. Because her story is the story of a good person who sacrifices everything, her name, her sex, her blood, and even her life, in the hopes that she can save her people, in the hopes that she can be a good ruler who does the right thing, and she still hopes to give even more. She is then brought back into the present day to fight not only these new mythical enemies, but also to confront every choice she's made till now. Did she rule and lead as well as she could have? Is being a hero really worth the suffering that she and so many others have had to endure? Would she have a happier and indeed more fulfilling life if she stopped fighting for everyone else and finally settled for a quiet life of her own? Ultimately, Saber has to accept that despite any failings, she has done all that she could and better than most other people, and that she needs to let go of any lingering guilt for things that she had no control over. After her final battle, she goes to the heavenly realm of Avalon and lives peacefully with the one who helped her realize all this. Her story is tragic, gripping, and human. And that's why fans of the Fate series don't care that she's a beneficiary of gender-swapped casting. They identify with her story and character because that's what good writing and character building does to the audience. And yet I know for a fact that if Fate were a new story released in the West, that there would be a massive outcry. The righties would scream about how it's another girl stealing a role from a man, and the lefties would say that Saber actually needs to look more masculine. Good lord, that's something that would happen now. The feminine hero needs to look more like a man because that's feminist. But that wasn't always the case. I posit that from the late 80s to around maybe 2010, diversity and representation in media was just accepted practice. I won't lie and say that nobody was racist or that there weren't fringe weirdos, but they weren't given nearly as much attention as they are today. Part of this is due to the rise of mass media, both social and legacy media. Everyone can scream into digital space and someone will hear them. Yes, just like I'm doing. And unfortunately, this has led to a very toxic back and forth between, well, everyone. The full details are beyond the purview of this episode, but after the war in Iraq, tensions between nations and the people within each of these nations were high. And now everyone had a platform from which to scream their fears and frustrations, and there were plenty of vultures waiting in the wings to tell it over again in whatever format they wished. Fear is among the most infectious of emotions, and that is what ran wildest for many years. Fringe groups that actually promoted racism were now able to shout louder than ever before, and consequently were made to seem stronger than they ever could be. And to counter this, Others fought harder against an enemy that was never strong enough to merit that response in the first place. In media, in schools and sports, and all the rest, we had to have diversity. No matter the context of any particular story or production, the cast had to be diverse. No matter whatever people were in a university recruitment pool, every sports team had to be diverse. Quotas had to be met. It was the only way to combat the rise of old and new enemies, and of course, any criticism of this outlook or the policies they produced was met with cries of racist, regressive, and whatever. Again, I'm not trying to say that there was no prejudice anywhere. But was it ever as wide? But in our lifetimes, as in the purview of just like in the past 40 years, was it ever as wide and talked about as it is today, for the past 15 or so? Was it ever pervasive to the point where it's part of every political conversation? Again, I say no. I say that this is something that's cropped up, or at least risen to prominence in the past 15 years, and yes, that is a very short amount of time as far as human history is concerned. We were leaving it behind, though. I'm convinced we were. Not any longer, though. In films, movies, and video games, this sort of thinking became a problem, because the cry for representation became a shield, a way for people to deflect criticism of their shitty stories and shitty products by saying that anyone who didn't like them was a racist. Ethnicities were dehumanized and made into tools for the elite to promote exclusionary messages, to vent their personal traumas, and of course, feel very righteous while doing it. But now, that's experiencing some pushback. These days, there is a growing number of people who will look at a movie with a diverse cast, or something of that nature, and will automatically assume that it is a propaganda piece, because that's what most of us are used to. But people are also doing this to movies and shows and games that are more in line with the works of, even just a few years ago. Good stories that just have a diverse cast, and we're still treating them like they're propaganda pieces. And that's sad. If you paid attention to my opening story about TLJ, you might have realized that I actually want to see more representation in media. We should be getting stories about people from everywhere. It may be shallow of me to say, but seeing people of my quote-unquote kind visually represented in visual media is rather pleasant. And even then I'm at half a loss because I'm only half Asian. There aren't a whole lot of mixed-raced protagonists around, and unfortunately one of the more famous ones is not my favorite. If seeing someone like you wasn't at least a little important for your enjoyment of media, then redheads wouldn't be fearing erasure every time one of their characters is replaced by a black person. If good representation wasn't more important than token representation, then black men wouldn't feel so put out whenever a black male character is made to be effete or stupid. Representation in media matters, but it's being misused as a tool for political nonsense and is holding back the visual and performative arts at large. As for what to do about it, I don't have an easy answer. My first two big requests would be these. First, stop using diversity as a tool for virtue signaling nonsense. And second, stop assuming that every movie with dark-skinned cast members is a propaganda piece. If we can accomplish these two things, then the arts will improve, and so will our collective states of mind. Seriously, we will all be better for it. And on that happy note, I bid you all farewell. If for some reason you enjoyed listening, please look at any of the other episodes of retrospective rants that you haven't seen, or take a gander at some of my written works. Thank you once again for listening to Retrospective Rants, and have a good one.